Georgia Tech is trying to put together the best running back duo in the country.
You are Locked On Georgia Tech, your daily podcast on the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome into another episode of Locked On Georgia Tech. I am one of your hosts, Caleb Johnson. I wasn't smart enough to get into Georgia Tech, but I'm plenty smart enough to talk Georgia Tech sports. Taking this daily journey with me, covering the Yellow Jackets, is my co-host, Jarvis Davis, who's been covering Atlanta sports for the last 15 years. We want to start off by saying thank you for making Locked On Georgia Tech your first listen of the day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. We're free and available wherever you download your podcast, and wherever you go to download them, make sure you leave us a 5-star review. Today's episode is brought to you by GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Today on the show, we'll get into, will the new redshirt proposal make a difference? Does Georgia Tech still need depth at defensive back? But first, Jarvis, we can now talk about this officially. You went ahead and let the people know with a live on our YouTube page talking about the exciting news that is Justice Haynes, running back out of Michigan, and what he is potentially going to bring to this Georgia Tech program for 2026. It was an expensive move, but hey, it's not our money, Jarvis. You know, it's the program's money, and if that's how they want to spend it and improve this roster in a pretty major way, it's pretty exciting. Certainly is. However, Jarvis, this is the kind of move that affects a lot of other people. But one guy in specific, which is Malachi Hosley, who clearly came to Georgia Tech to get the opportunity to be the man. We talked about in previous episodes other guys who came on campus, whether it was Aaron Philo, whether it was Luke Harpering, there's Isaiah Canyon, who had been put in a position to be the guy and decided to go elsewhere. And yet Malachi Hosley seemed to be given the opportunity, just a matter of seniority and other guys graduating and that sort of thing, to be the guy out of the backfield in 2026. And yet now Georgia Tech brings in Justice Haynes. How do you kind of see this affecting what Malachi Hosley is able to do?
I don't see it affecting it at all, to be honest with you, because here's the thing. You know, Jimmy Smith, the newly hired running back coach, he understands how to deal with multiple backs, and he had a historic season. I talked about this on when I went live right after the news broke, and he orchestrated a 3,000-yard rushing running back room when he was at Arkansas and back in 2022. And that was the 10th time it had happened. The last time it had happened, guess who had running back for Arkansas? Felix Jones and Darren McFadden.
I knew you were going to say that.
Absolutely amazing to watch, because that was a fun offense, such a fun offense, to watch back in the day, man, because Darren McFadden was an absolutely amazing player. And Arkansas figured out a way to use both of those guys. And I think that, this is kind of an easy selling point, to be honest with you, because you don't want to be the guy getting all of the touches. Now, granted, ideally, but when you think about longevity, and if your goal is to go to the NFL, the more carries you get, the more your value kind of goes down, unless you're just one of those dudes, right? Ear Gibbs, or a guy like a Bijan Robinson, use him as an example. So, I feel like this would be an easy sale to say, hey, we're going to bring this guy in. We're going to run the football quite often. We're going to run it 30, 35 times a game. And ideally, we'll get, between 10 to 15 touches for both of you all. And at certain points of the game, we're probably going to ride the hot hand. So I think that as long as they frame it that way, I don't think Malachi has too much to worry about.
No, I I think it's going to be interesting to see how um, how they both get used, just for the simple fact of you and I spoke so many times last season, just kind of frustrated of why does this offense seem, and why does Buster Faulkner seem so stuck on sticking with Jamal Haynes as their starting back when you saw the emergence of Malachi Hosley, which was a big part of why you went and got him from Penn. And yet his touches went way down. Like, I had pulled this up previous to look at it because it just kind of blew my mind. Malachi carried the rock 191 times for Penn in 2024. That literally dropped to 98 carries in 2025, which was just not enough, quite honestly. And
Sure.
yet, in the same respect, where Justice Haynes is coming from at Michigan, he was the premier back, getting 20 touches, or I think it was like 19 touches a game. So much so that in Justice Haynes' 7 games that he played last season, he had almost 30 more carries than Malachi Hosley did over the course of an entire season. So it feels like if you're able to find more of a middle ground between these two backs, with clearly Justice Haynes being the starter and
Sure.
then getting additional, production out of Hosley, I'm sure it has to be a little bit disappointing for Malachi, yet you know that you get to come in the game when the defense is tired because of what Justice Haynes has been doing.
Yeah, man, because Haynes is an absolute bowling ball. When you turn around and hand the ball off to a guy like that, you gotta feed him, right? Because he's just a house, as they say. So that's, like I said, that's going to work out to his advantage. Halsey, that is. So I can understand if he felt a certain type of way. I get it, but you gotta say, man, when you have a running back room with that much talent in it, I feel like it does nothing but breed competition. Now, follow the money when it comes to who's gonna get the most carries. We understand that.
Yeah.
Get that. And now he is coming off an injury. So he may or may not be on the pitch count. I doubt it.
I was going to say, I think by that point, just because it was so long ago.
Sure. Yeah. It was almost like mid-season, right? So when you think about 7 games, I think that even in that, you look at the situation and say, even if they kind of want to be careful with Haynes, Hosley is definitely going to get those other touches. And I don't think he has to worry about that, because he's a super productive back. And, we still might have to do an extra episode on why Jamal Haynes got more carries than him towards the end of the year, even though Hosley was clear and obvious the more productive back, coming down the stretch. But, I think in this particular situation, obviously, yeah, like you said, Haynes is going to be the guy. He's going to be the number one guy. And I think Hosley is going to be able to take advantage of some things that he won't have to worry about if he was the starting running back, like a fresh defensive line or a fresh linebackers. Like, those guys are going to, if they have success. I talked about this on the live right after the news broke. If they have success, man, running the football like I think they can, this is going to work out for all parties involved, meaning OC, George Gossett, quarterback who we don't know who is going to be. It's going to work out. Malachi Hosley, Haynes, everybody going to be able to eat if they're able to have success like I think they can.
I'm also kind of curious too if this doesn't kind of set up a position where, like, we know Justice Haynes runs the football, I wonder if Malachi Hosley becomes a bit more of the pass catching back who has that option, because he showed that ability this past season. It wasn't any major factor or anything like that, but just certainly showed that ability and had shown that previous to his time at Georgia Tech when he was over at Penn. So I'm kind of curious if the tandem doesn't kind of end up in that way, maybe not in such a predictable kind of setup, but just knowing that Malachi's got hands, and so can be a safety blanket, certainly, to whoever ends up, like you said, being quarterback, because we still don't know. And you kind of wonder if something's going to change soon, especially now that this dead period has come to a close. But Jarvis,
But also, but look at it
yeah.
from this standpoint too. Just to add a little bit to what you just said, like as far as with George Godsey, he can get a little freaky. He can put both of them in the game at the same time.
Yeah.
Like that happens. Teams do that.
Little wing
They
tee.
get, or put him in a gun, have both of those guys offset, to opposite sides, and man, you can do some really nice things. Line Hosley up in the slot, because ain't like they got anybody else they can do.
I mean, you make a fair point.
Yeah, so I mean, that's what you got to do. You got to put your best players on the field, man, and that's another thing that can be sold to Hosley as to, hey man, you need to buy in, bro. You're gonna get your touches. It might not be turning around and hand the ball off to you, but if we throw it to you, what's the difference? You're still gonna be able to get yards, you're still gonna be able to break tackles, you're still gonna be able to get out in the open field and make somebody miss.
Well, one thing's for certain, Jarvis. In 2026, depth at the running back position feels like it's some of the best that it's been in quite some time. And certainly we can talk in the future, maybe all time, of what it compares to. One position, though, that it appears is in need of some depth is the cornerback position. Does Georgia Tech still need some defensive back depth? Guys, there is nothing like college football season, and unfortunately, we're getting dangerously close to it coming to a close. But you think back to all the tailgates, the packed stadium for Bobby Dodd, maybe separate it from the game that Pitt was. But regardless, you got all of that energy, the vibes, the feelings of going to games are the best, right? But the frustrating part is clearly getting tickets to those games. That is why GameTime gives the advantage back to fans. It's the easiest way possible to unlock amazing college football tickets and experiences in just a few taps. You go to the GameTime app, and it's really easy to use so that you can be buying tickets in just a few minutes. They've got zone deals, so you pick the section, GameTime picks the seats, and you save even more. They've got college football tickets for as low as $25 and make it easy to plan a game day trip. Take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download the GameTime app today. We want to thank you guys for making Locked On Georgia Tech your first listen of the day. You already live your team every day. Now take it up a level and go ad-free. Join the Everydayer Club and get Locked On Georgia Tech with no interruptions, members-only Discord access, and more, all for just $5 a month or $50 a year. Go to lockedongeorgiatech.supercast.com or check the link in the show notes to learn more. Jarvis, we now know that Georgia Tech will have a cornerback on campus today that could certainly impact this team in a really positive way, because I'll ask, do you feel that Georgia Tech needs some depth in that defensive back area?
Yes, absolutely. You can never have enough good corners, man.
Yeah.
Like the safety room, I feel like those guys are going to figure themselves out. I feel like Tay Harris, Phoenix, Felton, they got some time last year. Like I said, I love me some Tay Harris. That man brings it. All 190 pounds of him. He's coming with it all of it. And Felton, I thought once he got an opportunity to play last year towards the end of the season, I thought, I saw some good things from him as well. So I feel like that safety spot can work itself out. But, I love depth at the defensive line position. And the next important one is definitely cornerback position, because when you look at all these teams, like 11 personnel is so normal now. They have 3 wide receivers, so that's why the nickel is pretty much a starter. Like when you had, Kelvin Hill, your starting nickel last year, so he's coming back for you. So he could look like he's gonna be pretty solid for you. So I think overall the cornerback position has to be something that you need to take a look at, and that's why I feel like this young man is going to be on campus today.
Yeah, it's former South Florida cornerback Jonas Duclona, who is a guy that has been developing. Spent his first 2 seasons with the Wisconsin Badgers playing special teams, and then when he got his opportunity, was a part of that really kind of fun run for South Florida that they had this past season. And like you mentioned, depth is going to be so crucial in that secondary. Just for this factor, Jarvis, like think about the number of injuries that corner position, safety position was hit with this past season, where you had guys like Jai Gilmore and Amari Harvey going down and affected this defense in a major way when they weren't there. So I will always, always, always push for more depth, but especially when you see a guy to the talent level of Duclona, who I think is, within his right, has really earned an opportunity at kind of that next level of the Power 4.
Yeah, and he's ranked the 6th corner in the 6th best corner in the portal. So, when you think about lining him up against everybody who's sitting up in that portal, because Lord knows that thing is deep. It's super deep. And, there's going to be a lot of guys sitting around waiting to get that phone call. So I think Duclona is a guy that when you look at what he brings to the table and what Tech needs, and us understanding that Key is working with whatever he needs to work with to go get players. We talk about Justice Haynes, that number that was thrown around. I'm assuming that was what it was,
right,
to come on to the flats. So hey, man, use some of that money to throw towards your defense, because Jason Semore is a guy that he preaches turnovers. That's what he does. Like everywhere he's been able to, get his defense to force turnovers. And I think that's going to be the key for them, this defense this year, in 2026. So if you can get a guy like Duclona to come on in, as they say, I think this defense will continue to be on its way, looking a lot better than what it did last year.
Yeah, in 2025, Duclona had 35 tackles, 4 passes defended, an interception, and a forced fumble. I think his best game was he had like 6 tackles and an interception. So he's clearly kind of shown the ability to have some breakout moments. Also, Jarvis, there's this element too, which is what is ultimately going to happen with Jalen Mbakwe. Like, where is he going to play? Is he going to do the Travis Hunter thing and try to play, both sides of the ball? Because I'm starting to look at that wide receiver depth, just like we were talking a few minutes ago, and like, oh no, they might need Mbakwe on that side of the ball. But then he's taken to his own social media right after he had made the decision to come to Tech, and he's tweeting about, he's putting on Instagram I'm blanking on the name of the trophy, but that goes to the best corner in college football. So clearly there is some want to play back on the defensive side of the ball, where he started off his career at Alabama. Still, it's like whichever way that Jalen Mbakwe ends up. Say what?
The Jim Thorpe Award.
Jim Thorpe, thank you. Yes.
Yes.
But regardless of which direction that Jalen Mbakwe ends up playing, or if he tries to go the Hunter route and play both sides, you're going to need depth, and you need guys who can handle playing in some man roles. Like how many times you and I were talking towards the end of the season, like, all right, let's scrap the zone. Like we need some man coverage here because we need some pass rush. And I think, that certainly feels like what we could be looking at in 2026. And I don't know about you, Jarvis, but I'm starting to find myself more excited about the defensive side of the football for this Georgia Tech program than the offensive side, which is a complete turnaround from just, the past year.
Absolutely, man. Because you bringing in a defensive lineman and you're getting guys in there. And apparently at some point today, the defensive lineman out of Cincinnati,
That's right.
Tim Griffin, he's supposed to make an announcement. Tech was in on him, trying to get him to come home. And, you just look at the size of these guys they've already got committed here, Jordan Walker and some of those other guys. I think that when you think about how Jess Simpson got a type, we talked about this. We had a conversation about how he has a type. You bringing in size because it was so frustrating watching team just run all up and down this doggone defense and not get any pressure on the quarterback when you were rushing forward. It's just you can't. You got to choose. Like you can't be both. You can't not stop the run and not be able to rush the quarterback. So I think that getting some bigger guys in here to be a little bit more stout up front and bringing in some depth, to at the cornerback position, and Mbakwe, doing his thing, going at the cornerback position, which is a very smart move. By the way, good decision, son.
Yes.
Because hey, corners get paid a lot of money.
I was about to say that's a good financial decision.
Yes, that's a financial decision, sir. Wide receivers come dime a dozen. I don't care. Yeah, I can talk about all you want. Wide receivers come dime a dozen, but I think when you think about all of this talent that's been added through the portal, they started up front, which I absolutely love, and now they're looking at getting some depth on the back end of this defense. Like that is a recipe for success, and I think Semore got some stuff to work with.
Yeah, it's certainly going to be interesting how that all shakes out. As like I said, we're getting towards the end of the portal being open, or at least the period in which you can enter the transfer portal. Of course, you've got some time until you officially have to connect with a school, but that's conversation for another day. All right, Jarvis, let's wrap up the show. Getting into this conversation, that some pretty big news when it comes to the future of red shirts, and will the new red shirt proposal make a difference? Jarvis, we saw this past week that a decision has come out of whatever this big AFCA conference is, where all college coaches get together and learn things and get all chummy and have some time amongst one another,
and salaries and
right. Yeah. And amongst this are a time in which coaches vote on changing rules, expanding things, making, alterations, all of that sort of thing. And one that the FBS coaches voted unanimously to expand is the eligibility for red shirts to go from 4 games, which we've known, it's my entire lifetime, all I can remember is 4 games for redshirt players, to expand it to 9 games. I gotta ask, Jarvis, is expanding this from 4 to 9 going to make a difference for college football teams?
If I'm thinking from a head coach standpoint, if I'm looking at a guy that is not necessarily going to be a starter for me in that particular year, but he can help me out by giving me some snaps and I can use him throughout the season, this is perfect, right? Because, gone are the days of the great players or most players sticking around for 3 to 4 years. You know, it was never a question that if your best player balled out in his freshman year, that he could potentially go somewhere else because somebody is offering him $5 million. That didn't happen back in the day. Well, it probably did, but it was like duffel bags being dropped off the hotel, and then people coming in at different times and leaving the money in there. So it will see no one exchange money and all that stuff. Y'all don't look at me like that. I know. Yeah, it happened. Yes, absolutely.
We got a whole documentary about the Pony Express,
Yeah, man, it went down like literally, it went down. So, so I think that given the current landscape of college football and where it's headed, I feel like 9 games can help you in the short term for, say, hey, instead of a guy saying, all right, coach, I know I ain't gonna be a starter here. I got my 4 games in. I'm opting out. I'm cool. You know what I'm saying? I'm cool on the rest of the season. Now it's kind of like, all right, bro, you can play 9 games and get all the film that you want and don't have to post your practice film on Twitter, at the end of the season.
I was about to say, you talking about when a guy gets an agent?
Gets an agent and he posts practice film. Dog, man, Caleb, I mean, I have so many jokes, but I don't want to discourage these young brothers out here trying to get it. They're trying to make it in life, man. But man, do you understand how that looks? You got an agent, but you posting your practice film on Twitter?
Feels like a little bit of a waste of money, if you ask me. But
I mean, if I'm I think that speaks to the agent too. You taking on clients that don't have no game tape whatsoever?
I don't know. I might need to look into the agent. It could be an uncle or a cousin or who knows with those types of situations. But I think getting back
might be Man.
Yeah,
Bam Bam.
When with the red shirt though, I think the thing that bothers me about this, Jarvis, is like, can we just get to what we're trying to say here, which is, all right, we're essentially trying to make the red shirt a 5th year. So just make it a 5th year, because at that, like, 9 games means you can go on your schedule and pick your top 4 worst opponents on your schedules, which is probably going to be some non-conference, lower level competition, and you've got so much more ability to essentially still play a guy without having to burn his red shirt. And so at that point, I'm in favor of just getting rid of the red shirt and we go towards, hey, you get 5 years, because with Pavia and what Trinidad Chambliss has been trying to fight for, like, these guys already are trying to play in college as long as they can, and it feels like at every turn they're being told, yeah, why not? Like, the NCAA is just not going to fight them, except for a few things here or there, especially in the case of Chambliss. But it's felt like the NCAA is set up to lose anytime they go to court and battle this stuff out. And so if you just add the 5th year, I don't know. I would love to see a lot more unanimous. You get 5, no matter what happens to you. If you break your leg in your freshman season and you break your arm your sophomore season, I'm sorry. That is so unfortunate, but I don't need.
Dang, Caleb.
I'm just because, dude, I see these TJ Finleys and others out here playing for 7 years. And I just want to be like,
trying to feed his family, dog. You know what I'm saying?
You know what he could feed his family doing? Working as a financial advisor for a company or an insurance salesman like Jake Fromm. Like,
you better have some investments now. He's been in college for 7 years.
I would hope so. I would hope so.
You gotta have some Bitcoin or something.
So that's where I get into this. The thing that I don't love about expanding it from 4 games to 9 games is, all right, that doesn't really feel like a red shirt anymore, because it doesn't feel like a whole lot. There's not much of a penalty, because you can be super strategic now about how you play guys significantly more. But why is this happening, Jarvis?
And they just expanded the conference games to 9 games too.
Yeah. Interesting how that coincides with one another. It's just that we know depth is as thin as it's ever been in college football, because guys are moving and getting opportunities other places. And
Sure.
This feels like the coaches going like, all right, since we're thin,
They can see.
give us these redshirt guys that we can play.
Yeah, and I think that, and to be honest with you, I'm totally fine with it, because they're just figuring it out as they go along. Because the NCAA, obviously, with the 2 employees that they have, I feel like that number just keeps going down. The 2 employees that they have working in the NCAA is the they don't have the capabilities to like really just do stuff and get stuff done, because they don't care. It's just, hey man, we just out here. We're still a governing body, but we don't really govern anymore. Because like only thing they really used to do is like, oh yeah, get this for violations. But now all that stuff is pretty much legal. So what do you do here?
They're like the FCC, man.
Yeah,
It's honestly,
like, what do you do?
It's a whole lot of, we show up and tell people we're in charge, and sometimes people go, all right, I guess. Well,
I need to see a time sheet, baby.
Yeah.
Let's see what the miles look like.
Yeah. Checks are clearing, man. And
yeah, they are.
And they're just fine.
Cashing, buddy. Cashing.
Well, look, it's a discussion that I think we're ultimately headed towards a different outlook of the red shirt.
Make it simple.
Yeah.
5 years, play 5.
And that exact thing, Jarvis, is I think where I'm at, where we got to stop complicating so much of what's going on in collegiate sports.
Towards
just
stuff.
Make it simple.
Just open it up. Open it up, man. Open up floodgates, because y'all have clearly opened up the bank. The bank has been open, and these guys getting $6 million, and Ty Simpson up here getting $6.5 million offer from Miami. Are y'all selling dope down there? What is going on? Y'all getting up straight off the boat.
Never.
They are throwing money all over the place. For any Canes fans that are listening right now, and I don't know why y'all would be, but hey, man, it's very clear. I watch Cocaine Cowboys. You know what I'm saying? I understand where the money comes from when it comes to Miami and how it got to where it is today. So there.
Jarvis,
they retired, you know what I'm saying? But the money's working for you now.
It's a good thing that the FCC isn't dictating our show, because I don't think that would have been okay. I think on terrestrial radio, somebody would have been hitting that dump button. But for us, we get to leave it in, and hopefully you guys get a laugh along the way. All right, that's gonna do it.
Putting up with me, guys.
Yeah.
Appreciate y'all.
No, you make everyone's day more entertaining that way, Jarvis. That's gonna do it for this episode of Locked On Georgia Tech. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube to Locked On Georgia Tech, and of course on social media. Jarvis is at JarvisD90. I'm at ATL Johnson 18. Thank you for making Locked On Georgia Tech your first listen of the day. Join the Everydayer Club and get Locked On Georgia Tech with no interruptions, members-only Discord access, and more, all for just $5 a month or $50 a year. Go to lockedongeorgiatech.supercast.com or check the link in the show notes to learn more. For Locked On Georgia Tech, y'all have a good one.